What is up, CSGs? Brian Windhorst on ESPN this morning said the Rockets are interested in Donovan Mitchell. What are the implications for that? I talk about that. Also, I got my boy Cooper Klein in to talk about the draft and 4 players that you all need to know about and why the Rockets should be interested in them. Tap in right now. Enjoy. The Rockets Chop Shop is your one-stop shop for all your basketball needs, for highlights, analysis, podcasts. We do it all here at the Rockets Chop Shop. Make sure you hit the like button on the videos that you watch if you enjoy them. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications from all the great drops that we have on the channel. Also, you can visit the Chop Shop merch store and get you some of the swaggiest gear in the Houston Rockets kingdom. And if you want, you can always support the channel directly through donations. And if you want, you can support us through our partnerships with our sponsors. The Rockets Chop Shop is made by fans, for fans, and we're going to keep rocking and keep dropping that heat.
This is something I know.
The third team I'll bring up, Brooklyn. Brooklyn has been, building up. Brooklyn doesn't control their drafts. Their future drafts are all controlled by the Houston Rockets. They are not in a rebuild mode. They want to build back up, but they have the Suns draft assets, and the Suns draft assets are potentially very valuable 3 or 4 years from now. They also have some good young players, and it's in the Eastern Conference, and Donovan Mitchell is from the New York area. So there will probably be more suitors. I think Houston potentially, but those 3 teams will be at the top of the list if Donovan in a month or so makes it clear he's not going to extend.
Yeah, I think it's...
So Wendy is saying the Rockets are interested in getting Donovan Mitchell. I'm not sure how, what the term interest actually means, but assuming that there is some interest there, you really have to think about the implications for us going after a player of his caliber. Me and Rusha talk about this a little bit in the previous pod where we were both not very high on Mitchell. Now, for me, not because of him as a player. I love Mitchell as a player. I think he's a dynamic guard, a great player that, adds a lot to the team. He brings great playoff performer, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that for our team, for him, adding a guard that is undersized, defense is a bit questionable, health issues are there. And it's just to me, I don't think that's the move right now. I'm still on team. Let's see what we got, because there's a world where Jalen or Cam could be just better than him. Now, not very likely, but the world still exists. And it's hard for me to tell if that's the type of player that I need right now when I'm still trying to define what I have in these young guys. Another thing to consider for the Rockets is the feasibility of them actually doing this. The teams that were named were the Lakers, Brooklyn, and Miami. Now, to me personally, I think Brooklyn probably has the best shot of getting him. There's the connections. I think Donovan's dad is like a GM or some executive with the New York Mets, the other team in New York. You got the Brooklyn Nets, the other team in New York. Maybe there's a thing there where he's okay going to Brooklyn to play. He'll be back home. Really no spot for him on the Knicks right now with Brunson doing this thing. So I think that's a good spot for him. That does have ramifications for our pick. And there is also a world where the Rockets, Cleveland, and Brooklyn engage in a 3-way deal that Brooklyn gets their picks back from us. We get Donovan, and the Nets are able to send some players over to Cleveland that are more complimentary of their players over there. So these are things that we all have to think about. I think overall, right now, it's just a rumor. I don't believe that the Rockets are dead set on anything. I think, as Stone has pointed out, they're open to everything. And that's the approach you want to take. That's what you want to do at this point. It's too early to let anything be known. You should be open to drafting, trading back, or trading out. And I think that Donovan, if we did bring him on a basketball note with the fit, I would assume that they would have to move some of our core players. Like, I don't see a world where you bring a player like him and still keep the core. Who that player is, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to cost. Like I said, there's a 3-way potential where we relinquish picks, including the third pick, the swap maybe to Brooklyn, and they get Cleveland. If we do directly with Cleveland, they probably want a guard prospect in return, probably Jalen, I'm assuming. But that's to me, that's too far out to see. But this is just one trickle. There's going to be a lot of names that are going to get thrown around. And rightfully so, the Rockets should be in the mix. That's the prudent thing to do. Have teams in the NBA not expect what we're going to do. Like in previous years, it's like we telegraph everything. We're doing this, and teams end up playing us. So I need us to be in every rumor. You know what I mean? Every rumor for every player, drafting every player in the draft so that when we actually are planning behind the scenes, nobody knows what we do and we keep our leverage. But I'm going to let you guys get to the second part of the pod, which is me and Coop talking about some of the draft picks. You guys enjoy that? Type in right now. What is up, CSGs? I got my boy Coop, King Cooper, for y'all Houston people that get that reference. Here, bro, I have to give you your flowers. I'm not gonna lie. I've argued with you, I think, for every draft, and it pains me to say this, but you've been right pretty much on every player. Down to Tari Eason. I know you were like, I like Tari, so I'm not even gonna argue too much there. But there were some wild takes about Tari and Jabari in the 2022 draft that came out that there's you might have been cooking something. And then this past year with Amen Thompson, you and James basically convinced me on live on while we were recording that, oh damn, this maybe I should like him. So this year we're back. I've let the audience know I really don't like this draft overall, but I'm starting to fall in love with some of the players, and we're going to talk about some of these players. And you are the Chop Shop draft guru. I know you're making your rounds on the different pods, but this is home, and I want you to help our audience and help me through some of these draft picks, which I suck at drafts. So what's good with you though?
I'm doing really well. It's hard to be super excited about this draft class, but getting a top 3 pick will make you excited, even if it's the worst draft in a decade. I think there's some cool guys at the top who are kind of interesting, not traditional top 3 pick type guys, but still guys that you're really happy to get and bring into your franchise. And I mean, I'm honored that you consider me to be good at this draft stuff, because I basically only get reminded about my misses. I get reminded on a daily basis about my Walker Kessler takes. But
hey, what is the phrase? If you don't take the shot, I mean, it's basically a miss. So, and bro, you take some step back, behind the back, off balance, Gary Matthews level of takes. But I respect you because you stand on them, and a lot of people, it's easy for everybody to like what everybody likes. Like, oh yeah, we love blah blah blah, but you really like get down to the intangibles and all the other stuff that don't stick out just from the casual fan viewing the players. And I think from my perspective, a lot of the stuff you've said is translated over. So, but this draft, bro, it's like, this is the one where if like every NBA team needs a Cooper on their staff right now, because it's the hidden gem draft the way I see it.
Yeah, you gotta basically anybody, if you're above like pick 7, you're basically just going for your guy. There's no consensus to lean on. There's no, oh well, I guess we like it, kind of like Jabari. Like Jabari was an easy selection at 3 because he's the third guy in a 3-man draft. You're happy to come away with him. But in this class, there's no top these many guys. You just have to figure out who you like and who you value, and not sort of get stuck in the echo chamber that is the scouting world. And this is going to make some guys some big money if they can hit in this lottery. So
that's big fact. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through 3 different scenarios. Obviously, the most obvious one is going to be the number 3 pick. We're going to talk about, you've selected two players in that position that the fans should know about, that you think are going to be good players for the Rockets to draft. And we're going to talk about the Rockets traded back within the lottery, a player there that you think the fans should know about. And then lastly, we're going to talk about if we were to slip out of the lottery, maybe we made a trade with a team that's further back for more future assets, a player. Who should we be looking at and on that back end? Obviously, there's a million players. I'm sure you love a bunch of guys in there, but these are your top. So we'll start off 3rd overall pick. Your GM. Who you got, brother? Who's the first person out of your 2 that you would consider there?
So my guy in this class is Ron Holland out of the G League Ignite. He's gotten some slander because he has not been very efficient this year. I'll fully say it. He was not good in the G League, but I think a lot of that comes down to the context. I mean, the context for all of these young players was so bad they had to shutter the program because they have no idea how to help and protect young players, who are really coming into their own. And Ron is the main guy who I think really suffered from that. He was basically made the number 1A top guy for this team. And I don't think it's fair to put that on anybody. I don't think there's a single person in the draft other than Edie who at lower levels is like even a 1A guy. It's a really tough ask. He really struggled handling the ball and scoring for himself, as a primary guy. But I don't think that's what he's going to be asked to do in the NBA. He's a super high motor, third, fourth option kind of guy who's going to be running around. He's probably the best wing rebounder in the class for my money. He is just everywhere all the time. Offense, defense. He's high pointing rebounds over centers. He's doing it all. He's flying in from the wings. He's battling down low. He can get up. He's really, the way I described him earlier is he's really versatile or athletically. Like there's guys who have a ton of bounce, but they have to get up off of 2 feet. And so they're not able to functionally use that bounce in the same way as someone like Ron who can jump off 1, off 2 while he's running from, just a standstill. He's really quick off the ground. And for a wing, I think that's a really valuable skill. He's, the defense is kind of developing, but he's got so many tools and he's got a lot of really good instincts that really just need to be honed. And as we've seen with Jalen, they don't do a good job of honing instincts in the G League Ignite. It's not really their thing. I think he comes to a team like the Rockets, plays under a guy like Ime, who can utilize those, give him real structure. And I think his development is really helped along by like the almost like overbearing nature of Ime's structure, where it's like you have to stick to this almost like to a detriment. I think that'll do a lot of good for him long term. He was just basically given the ball, given free reign, let loose, and that's just not going to work developmentally or for him long term. And offensively, I mean, this is kind of the sneaky part of his game that I don't think gets acknowledged enough. He's a great slasher. He gets to the free throw line a lot, and he's a really good passer. I'd argue he's probably the best playmaker in this draft. He's just such a quick decision maker. He had a lot of turnovers this year, but most of that is because he was basically asked to be the initiator, and he's not a point guard who's like running a bunch of pick and rolls and scoring out of ISO situations. And I would probably say 80% of his turnovers were handle based and not this is the pass he's making, and he's a poor reader of the game and he doesn't see stuff. He just needs to catch up to game speed and be put in real game situations where he can learn the NBA game, because all the instincts are there. The athleticism is there. The touch is there. He's got everything you could ask for, in an athletic two-way wing other than the shot. And that's where a lot of people are going to get really down on Ron. And I don't think he's going to be a great shooter, but I also don't know if he needs to be. The one way you can talk me out of like being super in on Ron for the Rockets is that we already do have a lot of guys who need to shoot at an okay level. And how many just okay shooters can you pair together and still be a functional offense? Like that's a really big ask. And we have some good shooting development guys. I think I trust the shooting development of these guys long term because of both who we've drafted, their work ethic, the coaches we have around them. But it's a big ask. And I think that he'll kind of struggle to find a place offensively. But at a top 3 pick, I think at the end of the day, you have to go for the guy who fits your team identity and is just so talented. And to me, that's Ron. You take the talent guy over the fit guy for, a roster that could be completely different in a year. If Cam and Jalen are gone, suddenly Ron's path to minutes is so clear and so obvious. And, you can't bet on an immediate fit in the way that people talk about it when draft season comes. And I think you go for talent every time you get the chance, at least at the top.
Oh, yeah. That and for Ron, I took notes as I was watching film on some of these prospects. For Ron Holland, let me tell you what my strengths I have for him. I have foot speed, transition demon, active body, and athlete. And you mentioned his versatility as an athlete. I just put athlete down because no matter what he's doing, he's athletic doing it. And it's not like, and we have a group chat that we talk about where we were debating who's a better athlete, like Jalen or Amen Thompson. And some people equate athleticism with just jumping high. I look at athleticism as functional. Like, can your body do what you want it to do when you need it to do what you need it to do, right? So, and he's one of those guys. Like, if he needs to go get a rebound, he's going to jump really, really high, higher than most guys to go get it. If he needs to, like, toward his body to do something, he's going to do it. So I would say those are his strengths. To me, my question with him, obviously the shooting is obvious. And the thing that I am a bit like, if I wouldn't draft him at 3, just because if his defense was elite like Tari Eason's was, then I'd be willing to do that. What I see on film is that he's great on recovering, but his initial kind of stopping the ball handlers, he gives up a lot. Then he reuses athleticism to recover. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, and I think so there's two things that are kind of a counter to that. I agree with you that this is like an issue for him. My counters are that he plays for the G League Ignite. It's kind of like Amen, right? Here's the thing. Amen in OTE, you didn't watch him and think, wow, he's like completely locking down every single player and destroying. Like, he would get beat. He'd give up, like, oh, I'm going to get beat and then I'm going to, swat it from behind or, back poke it, or I'm going to have some rotation. In these faster, looser leagues, a steal is worth way more than locking a guy down at the point of attack. And Ron was definitely way too steal heavy, even for the G League Ignite. But I think that he has good instincts for how to use his hands and his body in that way. I think it just needs to be honed. The other thing is he's also younger than a guy like Tari and even Amen. Like, that's a year and a half younger than Amen, 2 years younger than Tari was coming out. He is going to be 19 for his entire rookie, season. And, give him a proper NBA development year. I think those instincts can really be honed. He can actually be taught how to play proper defense. And I think also when he was, playing for the G League Ignite, his offensive load was just so high that, he's not, always going to be able to fully lock in defensively, and it's just easier sometimes to get beat, get the back poke and run out in transition than it is to get a stop and play, playoff basketball where he's getting a stop on one end and then setting up in the half court on the other. So I think it's partially also like an energy conservance thing.
So in context of the Rockets, do you think that, because with the way you describe him, he seems like he has a lot to work on, even though, like you said, I agree, you go with the upside is there, physical intangibles, etc. I have a sneaky feeling that for Ime, that he wants guys that they can plug and play now. And I think that Ron has a lot of things that he needs to improve on. And he's the type of player that if you draft him, you're not gonna, we put Cam and the men in the G League. I think he's probably spending the whole season there developing. I just don't see a world where the Rockets stomach that because I feel like they actually have needs from this draft that they need like right now. So, do you think that's going to affect if they're viewing him as a prospect where he lands with them?
So I think I do think that a guy like Ime would want a guy to come in and be able to play. I do think Ron can give you like Jayshawn Tate spot minutes and do.
That's a low bar, brother. But
it is. But like, I think he can be like a guy on your bench who's not just getting garbage time.
Right.
Like he can come in and do something for a winning team, even if it's for a 5-minute spurt. He can, give you a little shot of energy when you're on the second night of a back-to-back or something like that. And that's, valuable for a guy who needs some kind of reps and some kind of structure in NBA minutes to really develop. I do also think that at the top here, there's maybe 2 players who can actually slot in and play real minutes early. One of them's the guy we'll get to here in a second, and the other is a 23-year-old. Like, I just don't think that there are that many guys. Like, people kind of point to a guy like Zachary Rissacher, and it's like, well, he's 6'9", and he's playing in a pro league. It's like, well, he also is like not as good of a shooter as people kind of hype him up to be. He can't dribble, he can't pass, he's a limited defender. Like, that, everybody else at the top of this class is also really limited in a lot of other ways,
Right.
where it's going to be hard for them to earn minutes over even, a guy like Cam, who has his flaws, but especially Tari, Amen, Dylan Brooks.
Right.
I think Ron's skills, like he's got a truly elite skills that this team values, and that'll do more to get him on the floor than, some of these other guys that, like a Topic. And it's like, well, we need ball handling. And it's like, well, Topic in theory is a ball handler, but is he better than even Aaron Holiday?
Right.
Probably not. And if they're not right now better than Jeff Green or Aaron Holiday, then they're not going to be getting those minutes. And I think Ron is at least better than Jeff Green at rebounding and generating steals, which is something.
I mean, those are good points. Shout out to you for the ageism with the 23-year-old smirk and laugh.
Hey, I'm nearly a 23-year-old. Okay, so I'm getting there now. I'm getting
he hates. If you're over 21 as a prospect, you might as well retire. Like, just file your paper with the NBA as you're coming in. Just retire because he thinks you're done. Okay, let's move.
Get out of my hair.
All right, moving on. Let's go to this next name. Obviously, hot commodity on Rockets Twitter. I have mixed feelings about this guy, and I'll just reveal it. This is Reed Sheppard. Is a guy you told me you would have him at 3. I was surprised that you actually had Reed as one of your 3 slots. He doesn't fit the archetype of a guy that you usually love. You love these kind of, like I said, diamond in the rough, but he's a pretty obvious one. I see the analytics and everything, and but I'll let me know, why is Reed your number 3 in this draft?
I mean, 70% true shooting, 52% from 3. Elite free throw shooter. This is the ultimate, like, guy who comes in and can actually play immediately, as well as I also think he's got kind of a sneaky ceiling, just because of how good he is at, as a teenager. He's a little older. He's probably about a year older than Ron, and that makes him like an older freshman prospect, but he's younger than like a Brandon Miller aged guy. And I mean, he just shoots the piss out of the ball. And, he can come off motion. He can hit spot ups at an elite clip. He can hit contested spot ups. He, is a really great off-ball mover with a great understanding of gravity. You can use him as a DHO guy where he can hit the roller or make a correct pass. He just would add an immediate wrinkle to the offense that nobody else would. I think this guy, like him and Dalton Knecht, are the only 2 who would play so obviously so early. Like, people kind of look at him and he's a short white guy with short arms, and I do think he gets dismissed to some degree, but he's a good athlete and a truly elite shooter. And at some point, like, 6'2" is not short. 6'2" is the average point guard size for an NBA point guard. He is an average size point guard with elite strength. Have you seen this guy's biceps? He is ripped.
Yeah.
He is flinging other guys around at the point of attack. Like, I'm not very worried about the fact that Reed is this shorter guy, because we've seen guys like Eric Gordon, who some nights have to lock up a guy who's 6'1", and then the next night have to guard a 6'7" power forward. But if you're strong and you have the lateral athleticism to do it, that's something you could do. And I think Reed can do something like that. Obviously, he's not the athlete Eric Gordon is, but you don't need him to be this elite point of attack defender because he's also good off ball. He can make rim rotations and block shots and contest guys as a 6'1" guy because his vertical and his strength and his timing are all elite. He can, shoot passing lanes because he just sees the game at a really high level, and he can cause a lot of havoc on defense. And I do think that makes him a sneaky Ime guy because of the defensive numbers, the obvious defensive feel. Just he's so obviously able to fill a role on defense immediately, and then come in on offense, hit shots. And there are so many games this last season where if we just had a guy who can consistently hit open shots, I mean, how many do we win? 48 games instead of 41 at that point? Like, that was such an obvious need, and Reed is the best in the draft at doing that. Just hitting open shots, getting shots, generating those looks for himself. The handle's not super advanced, but I don't think it needs to be. He's like the one guy who's just so good at the things we need that he would come in and play immediately. And that kind of trumps I don't think he's as talented as like a Ron Holland, right, but he's so good at the stuff we so desperately need. I'd take him at 3.
See, I go back and forth with Reed, and I feel like as time goes on, I will end up falling in love with him. Today was the first time I actually got to do some film study on him. Some of the strengths. I have him a great shooter off screens, and this is not your typical JJ Redick coming off. Like, he off screen as a ball handler as well. So he's coming off of high pick and rolls, pulling up when they go under, he's punishing that, which is a big deal, right? Because the more you can do, it justifies him being drafted higher. Quick release, and he can get high pointed. What I mean by high point is a term I have where who does this really well. As soon as they catch it, they don't have to reset their shot to the bottom. He can catch it and release while he's catching in the at the high point. There's a player that does this all the time. That's coming to my mind.
Like a
Clay does it. Nikhil Alexander-Walker. Nikhil Alexander-Walker does a great job doing that. That's a little sneaky guy. Quick hands. Led the SEC in steals, which was surprising to see. And high IQ. So he's a high field guy. I love that for our players. To me, that's one of the most important things for guys to play early and have success in the NBA. You got to be smart. Weaknesses. Point of attack defense, especially against quicker, shiftier guards, which he's going to see a lot of in the NBA. I think that's going to be a weakness. The inside finishing is a concern right now, but you assume his role wouldn't involve like him having to be a primary ball handler where that is there. The lateral mobility kind of goes in with the POA defense a little bit. And to me, the size is going to be a problem. Now, I love Reed Sheppard. Let me say that. I love him as a prospect. My biggest thing is the number 3. And it's not about him being like a white, short, whatever. I just don't think that if you're going to draft 3 and you're going to, at that level, you almost have to go for upside if you're going to draft 3, because Reed is a player that, like you said, day one, he's going to impact your team right now. And historically, guys like that don't really get drafted that high. And for the Rockets, the reason I wouldn't be the guy to draft him 3 is not because I don't like him. In fact, if he's there at 3, I might take him. I'm going to assume that I can trade back, even if it's to Detroit at 5 or a team that's a little further down the line, still find him there. But with this draft, once again, bro, it's just really, really hard to tell. Like, it's hard to tell what these teams are. Do you think there are any teams that are really wanting Reed at like the top 3 or 4 position, like right now? Looking at, and real quick, we have Atlanta at 1. I think it's Washington at the 2nd pick. We're at 3. San Antonio's at 4 and Detroit's at 5. Out of those 5 teams, is there anybody that you think is a Reed team that's going to say, we're going to get this guy?
I think Detroit could do it. Just, I do think that he's so obviously like a great fit for them. They have also shown that they are not that good at drafting, and they are probably going to go for Stephon Castle or another big athlete who can't shoot. That's just their MO. But they are changing general managers. We'll see what happens. I do think the Spurs could also go for him, just like another shooter, a steady ball handler who you can put next to Wemby. I do think that he's also not making it past the Grizzlies. I would bet
Oh yeah, Grizzlies
All the
guy,
money I have
100%.
that
Yeah.
the Grizzlies would take him if he's available. And I, this is kind of like what I said at the top. When you're in this draft, you just get your guy. And I think
Okay.
Reed has a very good chance of being our guy because he fits everything we need. I do think the upside is a little sneaky good just because these guys who are just so good, so young, and like truly good. Like this isn't like Ron Holland, like, oh, he has these cool skills, but none of them have actualized yet. He is legitimately good. He's one of the few underclassmen to post a 10 plus BPM. Every advanced analytic, places him as like a god tier prospect. And at some point, you just kind of have to, like, I'm not even a stats guy. I was on James's podcast and I argue with Nevin because Nevin just loves to point at the stats. And I'm like, shut up and watch the tape. But at some point, like, if every single available thing is telling you this guy is good, maybe he's really good and he's probably going to get better. These guys who are so good, so young just tend to get better because everybody gets better at basketball. And I think Reed is just so good at basketball that it's not obvious how he's going to get better, but he's going to improve. He's not going to be stagnant. Nobody is stagnant. Mikal Bridges was like 23 as a rookie, and he wasn't stagnant.
Right.
Reed hasn't even fully physically, hit his prime. He's not even 21. He's not 22. He is not like a Knecht who is fully dominating physically. I think that as that comes and with NBA development, everybody's going to be surprised with how good he is and how good he gets. And I would rather just buy in. I'd just buy into the hype in a class like this where I don't think anybody else other than maybe Ron and, Sar, who I assume is going to go 1, is really fits this top 3 archetype. Just get the guy who is going to come in and be awesome and probably be awesome for a decade plus. So I get where you're coming from because he's not an archetypal top 3 guy, but this isn't a normal draft. You got to just do what you can. And also with the trade back, I would love to trade back with like Detroit or anybody. But I mean, the last time somebody traded out of a top 3 pick was not in recent memory. Like this is not a thing that really happens.
Wait, real quick, didn't the last time I think somebody traded out of didn't Brooklyn trade back with a team or something out of a pick? Not Brooklyn, or
was it Philly? It was Markelle. It was Philly to get, right? But that was a 1-3 swap for Tatum and Markelle. That wasn't like trading out of 3.
Oh, okay, that was the swap.
7. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like it's like, yes, I would. The only other one is like 3 and 5, Luka and Trey. Like there's these small swaps up high, and so I could see us moving down with Detroit if Detroit really wants to get their guy and they're worried he's going to go at 4 to the Spurs. And I would love to do that. I would love to get extra value for the pick and still get Reed, who is, such a great fit for us. But I would also 100% just be fine with taking him at 3, getting our guy.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. So for Reed, I think the fit thing, because he is probably the best fit for what we're trying to do, even with his limitations. He offers a skill set that is valuable in the NBA. I do have concerns about his defense against like premier guards, well, anybody, but when we're running, let's say we're running a certain lineup and Amen Thompson is not out there with him and it's Reed and Jalen, or Cam Whitmore, who's a decent defender, but I do fear that does limit some of the things we do with our defense. But the shooting, one thing I was surprised about was his playmaking and his ability to read the game. Usually with these like white shooter archetypes that we get out, like the JJ Redick and Fredette and all these dudes, they are very two-dimensional. Like they can, spot ups and, possibly attack closeouts. But he is actually a dynamic player. Like this dude is making pretty much damn near every pass in the pick and roll tree, driving kicks, floaters, pull-ups in the middies. So the upside thing is really there. And I think when you think about our team, I'm thinking about if like DHOs with Alperen Sengun and the passing IQ to IQ there is, I mean, you could do. I mean, it's you start thinking like that. A player like that, like Denver. I was watching Denver last night. The 2-man game between like Murray and Jokic is so hard because when you have shooters that could screen and rescreen, and Reed does a great job doing that, which is get a screen, even though they may deny him his position, his ability to rescreen and pull up off the shots from any level is just elite. So I think from the Rockets' perspective, he definitely does add a lot of value for us, like immediately for that. Okay, so now we're going to do the scenario where we actually trade out of the 3rd pick and within the lottery. So this is somewhere in the 10s or we go into the teens. Who is a player that you would have us be looking at for that position?
So kind of in very broad strokes, a very Reed Sheppard light pick, very much a guy you take for the same reasons. Duke's Jared McCain, not a traditional lottery pick, another 6'2" guard, but just a truly dynamic scorer and shooter. And I think he's a better rim finisher than Reed. That kind of gives him more, obvious upside as like a long-term guy. But he's not as good of a shooter, not as good of a passer. The feel's not as high. I think he's tougher at the point of attack. That Duke defense with him and Proctor was really, really tough at the point of attack. He's not as strong, but he's better laterally. His hands are a little bit better. Just another guy who can come in, be a dynamic shooter, dynamic shot maker, have some of that 2-man game dynamic with both Şengün and Amen, and just continue to add more looks to this offense. And I think that's the biggest thing is having guys who, even if McCain isn't, immediately a 15-minute per game guy, he can be a bench guy like Reggie Bullock. Like, oh, you need a shooter down the stretch, pull in, Jared McCain. He's a legit threat, and he exploded, offensively down the stretch in some games. He can be a real spark plug. He dropped 30, I think, in a game down the stretch of the year. Dropped a bunch
8 threes,
of
right?
games.
In that game?
Yeah. Like when he gets going, he is undeniable. And we could use a guy like that, who also has the upside to do more, to attack more closeouts, do some more ball handling, maybe be more of a secondary guy, but still just somebody you can dribble a little bit would be really nice, who's not Fred VanVleet. And, somebody you could learn from Fred as well, but kind of the same big picture sell as a guy like Reed. But I think that's a really big need for this team and something I would really look to address either with the 3rd pick, with a later lottery, even into the 2nd round. There's guys who I'd be eyeing to fill this not exact same role, but this shooty point guard 2-way role.
Yeah, for McCain, strengths, I have off the dribble pull-ups, high IQ on offense, high frequency on his 3-point attempts, more than Reed Sheppard. And then I put just he plays with tempo. So if you guys watch film on McCain, he reminds me a lot of Derek White. I would say that's kind of a comp that I have. Not as athletic as Derek was, because if you guys remember, young Derek White was dunking and doing all this crazy stuff. But as far as just like you were talking about, tough, always try to put his body in position, and he's Eric Gordon thick, like THICC thick player. So I do like, because with you talk about Fred, like one of the reasons Fred is not a great athlete, just a smart defender. But one of the things about Fred, he's so stout that players like that, you can make up for height by being thick and being able to stand your ground in the post. Because a lot of times what players are going to try to do is post you up because you're short and try to shoot over you. So if you can have the leverage on there to get under them, and I feel like he's a guy that can learn that. Pretty much you want to tag him a Spurs type of draft guy, a Memphis type of this is a guy Miami's going to draft. So I would I actually love him. Like these players you picked, obviously I know about Reed Sheppard and what's his name? What's the other kid?
Ron.
And Holland. But McCain and the next guy we're going to talk about, I really love him. I actually love them, man. I wouldn't be mad. To me, he's going to be probably the benchier version of a Reed. I think Reed is probably still coming off the bench on our team if he gets drafted, but he would probably have a more prominent role, whereas McCain would be the Aaron Holiday fit with just with more talent and a player that in the playoffs. I also put another comp, Alvarado, from the Pelicans. Just not like they're not built the same, but that pesky, annoying, get in your face, make the plays, hit the threes he's supposed to, and he's just a better shooter. So that's a great pick. Okay, the last kid we're going to talk about, this is somebody you have on the back end of the draft, maybe outside of the lottery. I slightly disagree with you on him, but go ahead. Let us know who we talking about here.
So this is a guy I would have as a lottery pick, like lottery value, not just like top 14 guy, kind of automatically a lotto pick. This is Dayton's DaRon Holmes. I think he's going to go lower in the draft than people would like. He's not this highly touted big man like a Klingon or an Edie or even like a Kalel Ware, but I think he is. I described him in our most recent pod on him as like the perfect offensive pick and roll big because he does everything. Like he is so smart as a screener. He's so quick. He's just like everywhere all the time, running around. He's a really good finisher. His touch is pretty good. He handles contact at the rim like nobody in this class. He does not shy away from contact, and that's a big thing for big men for me. Is like, oh wow, I'm a really good finisher on completely wide open dunks, like a Donovan Klingon, and it's like, well, sometimes you just need to be able to go through a 7-foot guy's chest and finish over him. Sometimes that's the best shot the team is going to be able to generate, and you need to be able to do that. And Holmes can do that. He is a good enough passer and ball handler to play either in like a James Harden type pick and roll where he screens really high and then doesn't touch the ball and then catches a lob or a layup, or also like a Golden State type short roll where he screens really high and gets the ball really high and he can really dribble and can like, oh, he's at the, the middle of the paint and then he makes a kick out because he's a really quick reader of the game. He's not like an advanced reader, but he just makes good, quick decisions. He almost never makes a bad decision. And I think that that's a really important distinction. He's not an elite playmaker, but he's a good, like, just make the right read, do the right thing. And that's what you need from your big. You don't want your big, your role player big to be out there thinking he's Jokic. Yeah, you don't want him trying to do too much.
Under
DaRon
the
is
legs.
never going to do too much. He's always going to play his role. Yeah. He doesn't need to be going like all the time. Like if it works, it works. But Holmes is simple. He's effective. And there's even some worlds where he's a pick and pop guy. I know guys who really study the shot and really think he has like the good pick and pop footwork. He can hit spot ups. He can hit mid ranges. He has good touch. I wouldn't super bet on that as his role, especially early. I think it can develop, but as like a come in and play type guy, you're looking at a guy who's going to come in, screen hard, roll hard, finish, and also be a really good defender and really good rebounder because the motor is just so hot. He is everywhere. He can grab boards that are fully contested. He's fighting every possession to grab these rebounds. And he's a lot more technically sound than you would think defensively for these kinds of hot motor, high energy bigs. You kind of think of them as like a Kalel Ware where he's like kind of flying everywhere, flinging his arms. No, DaRon's playing really sound, smooth defensive basketball. And he's really good at like all the minutia, like when to go up and try and contest a shot, when to stay down because his teammates contested it enough that it's smarter for him to just box out and grab the rebound. He knows he's just so good. That's the best way for me to put it with DaRon Holmes. He is currently so good. He's like a 21-year-old junior who should have been drafted last year and is still going to go underdrafted this year because he played at Dayton. And I don't think that's fully fair. He played really good comp and he was really good. He spaced out the floor. He did everything NBA teams wanted to see out of him. And I really like him.
I'm in love with this dude. I'm going to show y'all my little notes thing. There's a star by his name when I'm taking my thing because everything you said is spot on. I'm going to read my strengths. Offensive potential stuck out to me. I think he has a lot of room to improve as a polished offensive player. Like turnarounds, his post footwork, drop steps, all of that's in his game. Rangy. He's has about 7'1" wingspan. not as elite as I think he's roughly like 6'8", 7'1" wingspan. I have him as and this is, I want him. Like, I want the Rockets to find a way to draft him. He is our Time Lord in the way I'm envisioning this team. And if you want to be back in the draft and get a player that is low cost, you can put next to Alperen Şengün. Once again, IQ to IQ, I love that. I think the passing, like you said, he's not Şengün or Jokic, but for a rim running potential center, he is actually really an elite passer for that archetype of that kind of just run and dunk type of guys. He's not a run and dunk type of guy. The number one thing you said, bro, that I really love, and I'm glad we're connecting on this, the ability to pass and then be a short roll passer for his type of player is so unique. And not just like he makes all the right passes. You think about how Jalen was being trapped in later in the season when we were trying to make the playoff run. And with Jalen or any good guard, like when you start cooking, we saw this with Anthony Edwards against Denver last night. They're going to trap you. And if you got Rudy Gobert, as great as he is and everything he brings as the outlet pass, you're going to lose. When you have a big man that punishes traps, like a Şengün, like this kid potentially can do, it makes it just that much harder for your perimeter players to really be schemed out. So I think the biggest weakness for him is going to be just he is long, but he's not elite, like as far as with his wingspan that you would like from a player later in that range, like the Time Lord, who has a 7'4" wingspan. But bro, like, I like him over damn near everybody except Reed Sheppard as a Rockets target. And I just think that that's the type of player you need to bring in. And I trust my eye. I'm like Uncle Mike on Twitter. The eye test don't lie.
Dude,
the eye test don't lie.
The stats don't lie either with him. He's
he
advanced
averaged what, 20
analytics.
points or something?
Something like that. He was a
Yeah.
beast.
And so I'm definitely with that.
Fun stat. He led college basketball in dunks last year. I don't know about this year, but last year, while playing the 4 with another 5 who's currently in the NBA, Tamani Kamara, and no point guard. He was self-generating 100 dunks in a college season, and he dunked more than Zach Edey, dunked more than anybody in all of college, all of D1. He just the handle, I think, is kind of the sneaky thing for me, where you can use him as a DHO guy, and they're coming up to double Jalen, and DaRon still has the ball. Oh, wide open layup, like, because he's fast. Like, the handle he's not like manipulative or anything, but it's just functional, and he's so athletic and he understands his body, and he can just use it and get wherever he wants to go and make the plays he wants to make. He's the most functional player in the draft to me, because all of his skills work in tandem and make, his handle makes his finishing better. His finishing makes the shooting better. His passing makes, the finishing better. All these skills work together to make him just the perfect pick and roll big man. And if the shot comes around, there's a chance he's the best player in the class. Like, just full stop.
I read that he actually had an impressive showing with his shooting. I don't know where I read it, but when I was doing the research for this, in the workouts he had, like, he was shooting really good. I think he's a 40% 3-point shooter on like pull-ups or something, but it's low volume. Like, but I even the threat of being frisky from 3 to me is enough. Like, that's all I need. Okay, can he be a 33% 3-point shooter? Put him next to Şengün. I think that 2-man game, you're talking about him and Jalen, talk about big on big pick and rolls, big on big pick and pops. Şengün is one of the best downhill drivers for a center in the league, top 5. You put him next to a dude like that could handle too. That in itself is so dynamic, bro. Like, to me, these are the type of guys that we need to go find and develop, because when you can do that, it really opens up a lot for what your team can do. And I think he's going to be one. So let me ask you this before we go. What is your preferred? So we've talked about different potentials for the Rockets to happen. What do you think is actually going to happen? Like, what do you think?
I think we take,
as far
Reed.
as, are they going to trade? Are they going to, what do you think?
I think we stick. I think we stick at 3 and we take Reed. That's my official guess.
Okay.
I think Reed is like a sneaky, like, Stone did hire a lot of like old draft Twitter guys, and Reed is the perfect, like, he's like almost Moneyball guy. Like his you know, he's an elite shooter, elite passer, good defender. His flaw is that he's 6'2" and not that, laterally mobile. And I think that that's the kind of thing that this front office really relishes, getting these guys who are undervalued for seemingly no reason. Tari Eason, Alperen Şengün, just snagging these guys who are so obvious, and nobody else wants to take the risk. And I think it'll be Reed. I think that's my preferred outcome. Maybe I oscillate on the hour between wanting Ron and wanting Reed. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I think both are great picks. But it's
yeah. I mean, that's it. So whoever you want, do what Mike does. Get on Twitter and tell that person they're a Rocket for the entire summer. Reed, you're a Rocket. I need those tweets daily, so we can get them on, because I agree. I think if they do go 3, I would be skeptical a little bit with Stone, as far as, because he seems like he has a fetish for athletic players at that high up.
Hey, 42-inch vert. 42-inch first. Yeah,
okay, yeah, maybe get that. If I'm his agent, I'm sending the jumping clips to every team. But appreciate you, brother, man. I'll have you back. Obviously, things are going to change. There's so many other players, and we may just have to do this like every 2 weeks or something to look at different players in a draft. But appreciate you coming through, brother. Can you let them know where they can find any of your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ali_oop_coop. I've been, doing stuff with Upside Swings. We've been producing some podcasts. We've probably done about 12 guys right now. We got another one coming out end of this week, beginning of next week on Wings. Cody Williams, his name, I'm going to completely butcher the pronunciation, Tijdane Saloon. Guys like that, these 6'7", 6'8" wings who are kind of seen as lottery picks. And I'm really intrigued. I don't know how good they are right now, but I think they're intriguing players. And yeah, you can find me, just doing Rockets pods, hopefully on here some more. Always love talking prospects with you. This is a great time. Thanks again for having me on.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to have all the links to his socials and Upside Swings pod in the description. And speaking of butchering names, I apologize. I killed every draft. How do you say Ricochet? What is it? Ricochet? What is it?
I looked it up, and it's Ricochet. And then I listened to the draft lottery, and they were saying Ricochet. So I don't know.
Okay, well, yeah, we're going to struggle with that all summer. But appreciate you, brother. Man, thank you for coming through.
Of course, thanks again.
Yeah.
DJ Candlestick. It's the Chop Not Slap Show.